It's a dude cast.
It
This
is.
is this is becoming a regular segment, which I love.
We back.
I feel like and we're
Nice.
back. I know. Um, Today, I wish I could take credit for this topic, but Jeannie and I were driving around the other day, and I was like, "Oh, there's a dude cast coming up." I'm like, "I need a topic. Like, what do you think?" And she just kind of like, I don't know what she was looking at on her phone, but she's like, "Why don't you talk about like the hero's journey and moments in your life that kind of like correspond with steps in the hero's journey?" I'm like, "Where the heck did that come from?" Because that's a great idea.
That is a good one.
It's one of
Hell
those
yeah.
things I immediately I'm just like, oh, here's a moment that could be that. I'm like, then I'm trying to remember all the steps. So I can't take credit for it.
I
So I
love
give
it.
credit where credit's due. It's a great idea.
I
Um,
agree.
but so like I'm immediately thinking, does any of you guys like I don't know, I mean, there are like I think technically 12 steps, and I don't think we need to go through like I'm not gonna go through all of them. I'm just more interested to hear from you guys specific instances that like come to mind if you remember um, any stories in your life were like, oh, this is totally like this was a call to adventure, or this is what I need a
Yeah.
mentor, stuff like that. So like, if you guys want to start with any particular step or instance or story, I mean, jump right in. I don't know who wants to start.
Oh man, I was looking through this again, and I was like, I feel like I've gone through a couple heroes' journeys, by this time that are
Right?
like, it's like one journey that led to another journey that led to another journey, and it's cool. I mean, I love Joseph Campbell. I think that it's a really his approach to describing the world through myths is like it's a really beautiful and I think such an easy way for us to understand it. Anybody who likes any kind of media or books or there are such similarities that are like it's like when I learned about I can remember when I went to music school for the first time and learned like the first steps of music theory. And I remember feeling like this is wrong. Like music is supposed to be like something you feel. My dad learned everything from ear, so like he never took a music class or anything like that when he was drumming. His brother taught him, like and from listening and playing and stuff like that. So it felt like very formulaic to me,
Mm,
like to hear like, okay, yeah, but these chords work together for a reason, like there is actually a mathematical formula to particular genres. And I was like, oh my god, I was like, this is not math. I don't do math, like not and so I felt like this when I first heard it. I was like, it was so striking to me, like seeing like there's a recipe to the drama in your lives, like there's like
right.
there like actually is like there can be a consistent theme to fit within, like a framework to fit within that is like consistent, and it's in every movie, like every book, like it's so wild once you see the similarities.
Yeah, like once you like see the steps, you see them everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it's almost like if you like whenever you learn about like enneagram or something like that, and like it's just a different way to view something, you suddenly see it everywhere, or you're applying it, you're like, oh, this person could be this number because of these things. And it's like it's
Yeah.
more it's like both universal and very unique, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like a formula kind of, but it also like I mean it it lands for a reason,
Yeah.
because like we all go through, if not all these, most of these things, right? Yeah.
I think it's interesting how, you look at sort of the Jungian architecture of, these stories that we tell.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about, it can be applied to literally anything in your life. I actually got really in my head about it when you were like, oh, we're going to do the hero's journey. And I was like, oh, shit, I wonder if it's like the Parsifal one where, it's like the young knight and it gets
Hmm.
told and told and told. Or if it's
Yeah.
like more like Star Wars, you know what I mean? Like the
Uh-huh.
Right.
kind of more modern, like the central conflict happens in a different place in that one.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was trying to think, and I was like, I think you're right, Josh, that we sort of keep redoing it over and over again, like in different eras of your life.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing because that's like because then I think that when I was looking at it, I started to think like, oh shit, like there's gonna be another one, like another like big like challenge like that's coming soon. I thought like it's like if there was one that'd be so convenient, and I'm already on the other side of it. But actually, it's like what's coming on the horizon kind of got me thinking. I was like, oh shit, at least I know the steps.
Right. Um, right. I know, Josh. It's funny you're saying that. Like when you are taught like the mechanics of an art form,
Hmm.
right? I've run into this when I was teaching. One of the things I taught when I was teaching high school was a class on historical fiction, or
Okay.
like history through historical fiction. So we would like read excerpts of novels, and like of course there would be a writing component. And like how many times kids are like, well, it's like there's nothing to like learn. You just kind of like write and do whatever you want and feel what you feel in the moment.
Yeah.
And you're like, yes, and like with any good art form, there is like the freedom to express whatever is inside you, and also like is technique, there are
Yeah.
skills, right? Like
Yeah.
in music it's like, yeah, you learn scales, and it's like that's
Right.
not your heart's expression. You
Right.
learn them so when you want to express, I think it was Joe Satriani, the
Hmm.
guitarist, who said
Hmm.
like his approach to like the fretboard and notes was like total freedom through total control.
Yep.
Like you can learn all the technique, you learn everything, and then you know where to break rules, or like what makes what. Like you got those building blocks. Yeah, but it's really funny. I just thought that was hilarious because I've heard that and experienced that too, where it's like this is art and I'm just supposed to express, and there's no like way to do it. And I was like, yeah, there kind of is a little bit.
Yeah, like kind of breaks down the magic a little bit, like in it.
Yeah.
But that's like, but that's when going from like an explorer to a professional. You know, like it's
Hmm.
like somebody who's just like in the world. Of course, you can do music without knowing anything. You can make wild noises, and it could all be out of tune, and it doesn't matter. Actually, it's like as long as you can convey a message or a feeling that connects with someone, it doesn't actually matter the simplicity or the complication of the chords. But the way that it ended up landing for me eventually was like, just like you said, these are tools to use. You know, like having the information allows you to manipulate it in a way that you're like, okay, actually, I never really thought of, since I didn't know that these things even were related in any way, or there's
Hmm.
like similar distances or whatever. It's like once you actually know, then it's like, okay. And then you see people using that knowledge to then make art and music that was so conceptually dense
Hmm.
but sounded like shit, you know. Like sounded horrible, you know. Like, and it's like
Yeah.
I used to laugh when I was at Berkeley because it's like the Da Vinci Code, like where it's like these kids all speak Latin and no one who is listening to music speaks Latin, you know. Like they're all, and so it's like, oh yeah, this is cool for your classroom assignment, but literally no one would ever know how complex or any of the intricacies within it. And so that's an interesting thing about art, but especially about life. I think that that's why that even more so, like understanding this pattern could be something that informs you of like what's coming in a certain way, but it's also like because everyone's life is so individualized, you can really, it can be very very specific, which I think is
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
I think there's a really interesting element of it too, where it's like usually in the hero's journey story, there's kind of like a grizzled old dude who
Yeah.
like he's been there and done that. He knows what you're about to get into.
Uh-huh.
And on the other hand, you got the young, cocky, he
Yes.
thinks he knows the world, and then
Uh-huh.
everything blows up around him because it's like, yeah, you're new, buddy.
Yeah.
And I feel like I re explore that dynamic over and over and over again where I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like the Dunning-Kruger effect where it's like, you
Uh-huh.
start the journey thinking you know what the journey is.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
then it's like the dive into despair when you realize, oh my God, I don't know anything. And then you slowly start climbing out of that.
I feel like we've explored that a lot in the Dude Cast. Is like the things we thought we knew that we didn't know. You know, like the security that we felt that was actually like around the corner was just catastrophe. You know.
Well, what do they say? You only get long in the tooth by biting off more than you can chew, right?
Ooh, I like that. That's a good one.
That's really good. I love that.
Yeah, that's a good saying.
Yeah. All right. So I'll start with an example. Um, like I probably mentioned before on the podcast, like when I was 12, my team played in like the Little League World Series. Like that was the All Star season, and like I was new to that league that year. Like I had played in a different league, and most of my friends played in the league I changed to. So like I didn't, and I just thought like, oh, there's an all star team in the summer, so it's like, oh, it's a good chance to just play some more baseball in June and July, whatever. And like having no idea what actually the tournament was, where it could lead, I had no idea. So like for me, the call to adventure with that case was like, it wasn't even a call. It was like, sure, I'll do this thing. It'll be fun. Like, it doesn't have to be convinced. I'm like, sure, more baseball. I got it.
Yeah.
And then like slowly like learning about what like this playing opportunity would be like and how big a deal it kind of was. Like if there were, I remember my coach talking to me and he's like, look at the stands right now. Like they're empty. And then they could probably hold, you know, 100 people or so. And he's like, there's going to be people in those stands, along the fence, around the outside fence. There's going to be hundreds of people here. I was like, what? Like we're 12. What do we? Why? And he's just like, this is just like this thing gets a lot of attention. This like tournament or whatever. I'm like, all right. And then that getting to that first game, and like, there's a lot of people here. I've never played in front of this many people. Why is everyone interested? So that was like the threshold. Like for me, I caught like the threshold crossing where it's like that scene in Star Wars when Luke walks into the cantina. He's just like looking around at everything. That's kind of what it was. I was like, holy bananas.
Yeah.
And just like, that was just a moment where I was just like, oh, this is something I've never experienced this level. And it was just that moment and it hit me. I was just like, oh, okay. And I had a pitch that day. I was like starting pitcher. So I was like,
oh God.
Which was good because I was like focused. Like I guess it was just me and the ball and the catcher. And like, it was not hard to block things out because I was like, I have a task. And if I was like in the field and not as busy, I probably would have been more in my own head. But it was nice that like I had to be involved in every single play, so that kind of like distracted my brain from what else was all around me. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah,
it's funny how once you're actually in the thing and you have to engage and perform, usually all the anxiety kind of goes away. It's the pre and the waiting times that really get you.
Totally. Whenever before a show, I would always. The worst part is the waiting. It's like, you know that you have the show. And when you're performing at night, especially if you're like a headliner or whatever, it's like you literally spend the entire day waiting for like a 45-minute situation. And it's so crazy how your mind can make it seem like it's like this, like you're about to die, like on the other side of this is death, like it's like what it feels like. And it's like, but that is so strange. It's like, and so I would go into the stall, the bathroom, and I would just sit in there and wait because I was afraid of losing my voice by talking to people like over the music or whatever. And then I felt like everyone thought I was a prima donna, but I was like, I just need to get away from everyone so I don't talk too much, but that waiting part of in life in general is like, it's crazy.
I mean, it makes me think of that scene in Return of the King in the movie. Pippin and Gandalf are like on a balcony in Gondor and looking over and they see Mount Doom just spewing fire.
Yeah.
Pippin's like, I don't want to be in a battle, but waiting for it to start is even worse.
Oh, it's horrible.
Waiting. It's the same thing where it's like the lead up and the build up to it is just, you'd rather just have it start.
Yeah.
It's funny because like you definitely get a microcosm of that idea of like going into battle, but in a really safe, not actually dangerous way with jujitsu competitions. Because like when you're waiting, there's this distinct sense like he's going to try to strangle me or break my arms or break my legs. Like one of those three things is going to happen. And it's like you can have a lot of feedback that's not actually going to be the outcome. Like a lot of feedback, hundreds and hundreds of rolls on the mats where you tap and you're fine.
Right.
It's more like a high school wrestling match than a UFC fight.
Yeah.
But your brain doesn't know the difference. It sees the guy, and you know that that's what they're going to be trying to do, and you go into like an adrenalized fear state for a second.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, I think it's actually really good for, I don't know if it's good for everybody, but it feels good for me because everything else is so low volume after that.
Yeah, that's like, true.
Stress feels different, compared to like, he's going to try to strangle me.
Well, it's especially in combat sports. It's like, man, you guys are sort of gearing up to hurt each other in a certain way. And so it's like, you're going to kind of try to strangle him, and so because you're like, I bet he's probably thinking the same thing.
Well, that's the trick for me is realizing that this dude is in exactly the same headspace I am, and he's just
Definitely.
as scared of me as I am of
Mm.
him.
Yeah.
And usually there's this moment when you're in the bullpen or you're waiting, and you kind of like some dudes don't like they won't shake hands. They want to psych out their opponent.
Mm.
But I'm not really like that. I'm not like competing for money or anything. So
Right.
it's like usually there's this moment where you're like, hey, my name's Brian, and it
Yeah.
tells the vibe where it's like, oh yeah, this is my third match today, and you realize he's just a
Just a
dude.
dude.
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a guy.
I like
yeah,
So
that.
you guys have both talked about different venues where I have not really experienced, but I appreciate like the jujitsu combat sports. Josh, like performing live music. I haven't not really done either, but I can totally like put myself in like, holy crap, that is nerve wracking and an ordeal, right? What
Totally.
was like in those two venues of like where you guys, or if you could talk about something else, but like the crossing the threshold moment, like the moment where you're like, you want to do this thing, and then you kind of get to the point where it's like, oh, this is completely different, or like I'm in this world now, then there are things that I thought I knew, but I don't know. Do you have moments like that?
Oh yeah.
definitely. I mean, the thing that just immediately jumps into my mind is like, so the way that most matches start is you slap and then bump. It's like a little jujitsu handshake that everybody at some point started doing.
Yeah.
And so you do this slap bump and like you start trying to make grips. And the goal is to get the person to the ground one way or the other, and ideally in a way that you control them rather than the other way around. And what's interesting is how strong, and everybody who's competed jujitsu will say this, is like people feel ridiculously strong. And you're like, this is not a roll. This doesn't feel like a roll, which is
Hmm.
the way we describe sparring.
Yeah.
And it's because they're adrenalized. But what you
Hmm.
don't realize is you feel like that too. So like you both are at your peak like strength because you've got all this cortisol dumping through your system. But what's funny is that all the fear suddenly goes away. Like you're in this technical sport, and it is a very like technical sport. It's not like you're just sort of throwing haymakers at each other, and at some point in the middle of it, assuming that you make it to the middle of it, you actually will get into like a position you recognize, and then you're just on a mat doing jujitsu again. But that initial slap bump, especially in the first few competitions, was always like, oh, the map ain't the territory. Like this guy,
Mm.
you have the, oh, he's just another dude moment, and then you're like, oh, he's just another dude who's like a cyborg and he's much stronger than me.
Hmm.
But it's a weird thing to like slide back into the technical after having the surge of adrenaline, I guess, is where,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
I think in performance, it's like for me, it's it's very clear the threshold is like when the music starts, and it's like there's such a buildup with the sound check and the setup. Like there's so many steps before that allow you to kind of get in your head, and especially when your instrument is your body, like it's a very interesting thing because like that adrenaline affects my ability to perform. Like it really does affect my blood pressure, the everything about when you're a singer can affect like your tone, your ability to stay healthy. Like there's like but like you said, it's like you definitely don't think of those things once the music begins, like once it actually starts. And especially for performance, it's almost a persona, like there's like a persona going on that like I am no longer like my nice Josh self. I'm like out there trying to be a frontman, like so there's like a whole different version of myself that is like 10 times more confident than I am. That is like because when I'm on stage, I feel like I'm in like the pocket. Like I am there. Like I feel like I am totally comfortable. That is the most free and like it's me celebrating something I love, like and I see like music as that kind of thing, like where it's getting an opportunity to do something that I felt like I've my whole life that I was made to do. And because my body is my instrument, it's like it's sort of this like true in a certain sense that like I was made to be here. And so all that nervousness, just like you said, goes away once I sing that first note, and it isn't a terrible note. Like if I can sing a good first, and we used to front load our sets to where like the first song hits you right in the face, like trying to, and that was really strategic as well because that allowed me to let loose. And once I could like let loose, then it's like do I know the lyrics to this song? That is like that would be the consistent thought every time, because that's a consistent fear that doesn't go away actually when you're because there's many times a song would start that I played with my brothers a million times, and I'd have to look back at my brother, and it's just so weird. If I can't remember the first lyric, the first line, I can't remember any of them. I can't remember a single word of what I'm supposed to say. And I look back at my brother, and he's like, my brother Patrick is a drummer, and he was the quarterback of our band. You know, like he knew every song back and forth. He could tell everyone their parts, and so I would look back at him, and it's so funny. There's many videos of me delaying the beginning of a song because I'm looking at him while he's playing and going, "What's the first lyric? What's the first lyric?" Like what? And he's mouthing it to me, and I'm like, "What is he saying? Like, what are the words?" And then when he once I'd hit it, if I said that first line, it's gone. I'm gone. You know, like then it's like we're on a roll. We're moving through the song. But it's so funny how that's the threshold. It's like that first word, that first note, and then after that, we're off and running. You know.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, in both of your examples, it's interesting. As I'm looking at the steps, and I think this is true to most like real life scenarios, situations of the hero's journey, where like in a jujitsu competition or your first performance, it's like you go from like crossing the threshold to like the reward and the road back, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's such a microcosm that like you like that first performance, right? You're on
Yeah.
stage, you're like, holy shit, this is a thing, and then like that's when you're tested, right? And that's like the ordeal, and like, can you meet it? And then like once you do, and you're done, you're like you are changed, like you've
Oh
done the
yeah.
thing. So like you are now Josh, a performer, and
Yes.
who has performed, and you're like Brian, the jujitsu competitor. It's like I've competed, win or lose. It's like you were able to compete. So like it's funny, all these things have like one instance, one event can have like multiple steps, and it's just on a very like much kind of smaller scale, but I think it all like counts because it's like in that season I was playing with that team, like there were like, because like it was a tournament, so like games kind of had more meaning as you went on, right? So it's like, but they all kind of like were at 11, right? It's like the
Yeah.
first game of the tournament, we got it. It's like, okay. It's like the second game, tougher team. It's like, okay, we're all up here. um but like I'm kind of looking at that whole season, that summer, as like, yeah, there were like tests and ordeals, and wasn't completely like linear. Like we didn't just go,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like, oh, here's another test, oh, here's a reward, here's another ordeal. So like each one of these things, each one of these games that we played, like could encompass. And definitely by the end of it, I felt like, oh, I felt like I'm not the same player or person I was at the beginning of the season, based on like the challenges and experiences. But it's just, I was just thinking it's cool that like, a lot of steps can incorporate one like thing you do.
That is really cool. And I think when I looked at this as a topic, I thought of it as much longer journey than like a moment, like where it's like the things that came to mind wasn't like a singular performance, but now that we're talking about it, it's like every moment in your life can kind of be 12, like the journey, like, and so it's so funny. Like the first thing that came to my mind when I thought of this was when you find out your wife is pregnant, like, or like when you have that moment, like where it's like you're in your ordinary world, you don't have kids, and you're just like living your life, like, and everything is normal, and like, my god, the call to adventure when you get that news, and then you get more news that it's not just one baby but two, then it's like a whole new journey. Like, and like that's the one that came to my mind right away, that I was like, holy shit, man, I'm still in the ordeal, I'm gonna be in this ordeal for a while, but the reward is consistent. It's like there is like this consistent reward, and I feel like that is kind of what you were just saying, is like there are little moments of these that fit into all of them, and then like it's just a profound thing to think, like, okay, the road back, like we're on our road back to normalcy as the boys get a little older, like to get into, but I'm never going to be that pre-baby person ever again, like that's for sure.
Well, in a weird way, it's like, I, without like making it completely a gendered thing, but I think that the hero's journey is often the story of like a boy becoming a man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to think about how, it's always sequences of events. Like I know Robert Jordan wrote a book called He, and it was like old school Jungian psychology, but told through this Parsifal myth, which is like what becomes the Knights of the Round Table and that kind of
Mm-hmm.
storytelling later on. but there's just these beats, so one of the beats is that he has to basically like cut the tie with his mother. Like that's the
Mm,
first step of the hero's journey, is like
Hmm.
usually the parents are killed, or like they
yeah.
move to a new place and their dad dies, or something like that that cuts the parental relationship. And then they go and they have their first fight and they're like ridiculously outmatched.
Hmm.
They're and they realize how little they know. And so then they have to go become sort of like a wizened old knight or something.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about how, I mean, it doesn't get much more archetypal than that. Like you have to
Yeah.
essentially like abandon your parents if you want to be an adult at some point, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And yeah, so I was trying to think of different moments in my life like that, and I think we all have got them, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Those moments that it was like that's when I trusted my own judgment more than somebody else's judgment,
Yeah.
or I.
Definitely. Well, and it's interesting you say that because another one that came to mind, and I don't want to go too many times, but I thought then immediately of when my parents left me in Boston when I went to school, where it was like I had never been, I don't think I'd ever been more than 100 miles or like 300 miles from my parents in general. But then like being in a whole new city by yourself, just wait like, and they leave and you're free, like you have like freedom to make choices is
Mhm.
like just a crazy. That is like a threshold of all thresholds. I feel like in my life that immediately jumped to this because it's like I was so afraid to be on my own, but also so excited and like that's a real threshold of like your parent, like you said, your parents going. It's like you start a new chapter that is like your real life in a way, and
Right.
Can I
that's
ask you
cool.
guys a question?
Yeah.
So, what was a moment in your life where you realized like the cavalry wasn't coming, that there wasn't like an adult that was
Mm.
going to come save you, Because I
Mhm.
think that's a big part of that story too, is when you're like, oh, I am who saves me, I'm
Yeah.
the
Right.
adult.
I think for me, it definitely it's gonna. Cause Josh, I was thinking the same thing about being dropped off at college, right? Because that's a pretty typical like you are here, we are leaving you, you're on your own, goodbye.
Yeah.
And I do remember having the thought like in the first few days of being at school, like even if I were to be like I want to go home, things still wouldn't be this like that wouldn't change. Like things are changed and me returning and being like, "Oh, I'm not ready for this right now." Things are still different. Maybe because like my other friend groups were all still going away, they were
Hmm.
still experiencing that. I'm like, me wanting to not do this can't undo the change that's like in progress right now. So like I
Hmm.
kind of had that awareness that like, okay, if change is happening, going backwards is not an option, even if you literally wanted to, because things are still changing. So I had that
Yeah.
thought. Um, but yeah, dealing with like professors and exams and tests, it's like, oh, I'm talking to someone who really doesn't care about like me personally. Am I like a math professor in my like first year of like a required math course? And it's like they didn't like it was totally like, oh, my high school teachers cared on a level um that was like probably more common. It's like, smaller scale. But then it's like, oh, this person doesn't really care. I'm like, oh, if I need to advocate for myself or anything, if I need to improve, like there is no one is going to circle the wagons for. No one's going to be like, well, let's have a meeting for Matt because he needs help figuring this out. There is none of that. And I was just like, oh, this is like all on me. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, that was just a moment of like, oh, no one really cares. I mean, maybe an exaggeration, but I guess that's what it felt like. I'm like, people aren't like really invested in me personally as they were like a year ago.
Hmm.
So it was like, okay, now this is very weird and different. And again, I could like call home, I can talk about it, but at the end of the day, it's like this is on you, man. So yeah.
Totally. I think for me, one moment that just came to mind was freshman year of high school when I played football. Because I had never played football in my life to that point. I played soccer like my whole life. And so I played football because only one of my friends that I knew I went from Catholic school where I knew the same 90 kids. They were in my class from kindergarten through eighth grade. So 9 years straight of the same people. it's sort of similar to like the safety you feel with your parents, like it was the only world I knew from when I was a child to like, so that means I didn't know anybody of another faith. I didn't know anybody, like I didn't know anything, I felt like at that point. And so there was a point where like I was at football practice and I wasn't the biggest kid, just guess, not big surprise. I wasn't the biggest kid out there, and the kids that I was friends with were like the best players on the team, and they were all huge. And so I can remember feeling like, holy shit, like number one, this is kind of violent. Like I'm like, oh my God, like I'm gonna get killed out here, like, but it's not like I can call my mom to come pick me up. It's like I gotta like be in the shit here. Like I gotta really like take this all in. And also like I can't complain, I can't cry, I can't be like I can't show fear or weakness. And so it was like a real call to arms, like where it's like, all right, man, like let's put pads on pads and helmet on helmet and let's see what happens. And it definitely it didn't work out perfectly. That's for sure. That's for sure. Like have I ever told this story of my first game in this podcast when I got like 10 pass interference calls in a row?
I don't think so.
So when we played our first football game, like, and I was so excited, like we had practices, we did all this stuff. And I played cornerback and wide receiver. So I was like guarding, we were on the goal line, and there was like, they had a 6-foot kid on their team who they obviously sent out to me to be on an island with. And so the ball, every time they did it, they did it 10 times in a row. They started the play and he just would run a hitch. He'd just run out and curl around. And he was so much taller than me that as the ball was in the air, every time I just tackled him. I just tackled him every time. Like, and my friend, I'd go back to the huddle and my friends were like, what are you doing? Stop doing that. Like, stop. And I just did it over and over and over again. Cause I don't know. My mind was, I couldn't get the timing right. And it was my first game, but that was like, I was like, holy shit, I'm outmatched here. I do not know what I'm going to do. So that's an example, definitely, of an ordeal.
I mean, that's why, I'm not surprised that we have sports examples, because I think sports examples are a nice contained environment for steps and situations like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it's like I think.
Well,
it's
like we don't have really a cultural rite of passage in the West, right? Whereas a lot of more, I don't know, different types of cultural experience, like you would have an age where it's like, okay, you're going out into the woods now and you're not coming back until you, I don't know, like hunt a bear, you figure out how to feed yourself or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think sports are our cultural rite of passage a lot of times, or theater or arts, like I think that it can happen in a lot of different milieu where you have to prove yourself and you have to put some skin in the game and show your worth in some way,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know what I was reading, but I forget when exactly, but it had to do with like the young people and young men's experience growing up and our culture and society. And it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe it was Joseph Campbell, because he was saying how like definitely older, more primitive societies, cultures had like, you had a moment, like there was the ritual where you are a man now after you do this. And it was like your initiation into the tribe. And it was intentionally very difficult. Like the intention is like, yes, this will be difficult because you are not a boy anymore. Like you are a man. There are men level expectations and duties, and we have to make sure you're ready. Not just like, I guess you're in 7th grade now, so here's the thing we do in 7th grade. You know what I mean? It's like this actually, like Brian said, like there's skin in the game. You have to prove yourself. So yeah, I guess that's why sports is often a replacement for that kind of thing.
What about you, Brian? Was there a time that you had to cross the threshold?
Yeah, we lived on the planet Caladan, and my parents were nobility. And what happened was that the emperor actually called my father to take over the Dune planet. And then a sandworm.
Yeah, sandworm came around. Yeah.
I was kind of blessed by having. I mean, I've been thinking about like how to put it diplomatically, just in case like my family ever listens to one of these things. But I would say I had parents that were very good at making sure I became responsible young, in different ways. My parents were separated, so my mother, I spent time with both of them, and in both contexts, like there was a sort of a need to grow up early a little bit.
Hmm.
Uh, and I mean, I can speak to my mother is that she had mental illness and a physical illness. She had emphysema and was pretty impaired by it towards the end of her life. And so I ended up doing the majority of like kind of housework and cleaning and cooking and that sort of thing in the house to kind of keep us going. And so, in an interesting way, I think that I've had like a couple phases of actually regressing back and like wanting to be a kid again. To some
Hmm.
degree, I'm like, I'm a middle aged man who still plays sports in a way that's not very, it's not conducive to like a good career necessarily. Like you can ask anybody in my life. And so I think that, like you can have that rite of passage in a way like forced upon you, and then that creates its own sorts of sets of things later where I'm wondering, can you guys hear sort of like a weird like background
Click.
interference?
I heard like a little click, but I don't hear any like feedback or anything like that.
No,
Okay,
I don't either.
cool. Then it
Yeah.
must just be my earphones or something.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would say that would be the big moment where it's like, oh, there's not really like an adult in charge in this house. I actually had this moment that came to mind when I was pretty young. Like I was probably like between 8 and 10 somewhere. And my mother's mental illness was such where it was very encapsulated. Like she wasn't like a stereotypically mentally ill person. You wouldn't necessarily know it if you just had social interactions with her,
Uh-huh.
but it was like a delusional kind of a schizotypal thing.
Hmm.
And so when I realized it, I was like 8 to 10, and she told me that our walls were bugged. And I was like, "What do you mean they're with their bugs on the walls?" Like I thought she meant insects. And
Yeah.
she was like, "No, there are microphones in the walls listening to what we're saying." And I was like, I was 8 to 10 years old, and I was like, "That doesn't track. We're pretty unimportant. Like I don't,
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't
think
believe
so.
you."
Yeah, right.
But there was this moment where I was like, oh, I can't necessarily trust what she's telling me. Like, she's not a reliable narrator. I didn't think of it
Hmm.
in those words, but that was
Right.
like my little brain was like, I should pay attention. Like, I don't know if I can trust what she's saying. And I think that's the moment that stands out in my head is like, okay, I need to look out for myself a little bit, you know?
Wow,
Wow.
you must have been a smart dude. that is such. That's a
I,
smart. That's a good intuition though. Like to have that kind of awareness is very mature. Like that actually, because I think about my little 9-year-old I got. He don't remember where to throw things away. Like
well, trust me when I tell you, it didn't inhibit my dumbassery at
I'm
all.
sure. I'm sure.
You know,
just,
no,
just another
I went the
layer.
other
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Right.
That is
I think that
remarkable.
same year I put a bunch of little green army toys in the oven, and like she was really mad. So I was still a
You were
little
doing
kid.
both things. You were playing both sides of it. That's
Yeah.
Right. It's like
it.
making such an astute observation, judgment, and like, oh, evaluation of like maybe I should watch this. Yeah, I should pay attention to this more, and I will. Right after I take my army men out of the oven.
Yeah, once they're done, once they're
I
done,
don't
I'm
know
taking
what
them
my
out.
plan was, but
I think that's a creative experiment, though. You never know what's
You
going to
never know.
happen.
seemed like a good idea at the time.
That's right. That's
Speaking
what
of
easy bake ovens were for our age, my generation.
speaking of weird tangential experiments I did, there's two stories. One, my mom tells a story about how she was driving home from work and was pulling in the driveway. And she looks up at my bedroom window, which was on the second floor, and she sees me like half hanging out with like a yardstick because I
Mhm.
had army men with parachutes on them that I was throwing out the window.
Have
And
to.
it got caught on the telephone wire, so I'm just like trying to get it. And like she sees me like mid reach and is just like, "What are you doing? Stop it, please." And one other time in the same house, in the same bedroom, I decided I kind of wanted like a speed bag, like a plastic
Uh-huh.
thing.
nice.
And I was like, I didn't have one, so I was like, well, what do I have around the house that I could make? So I got a plastic shopping bag,
Hmm.
and was like t-shirts and socks, and then I used tacks and rubber cement to glue it and stick it to the ceiling. And
Nice.
again, my mom's like, why and how is that there? I'm like, tacks and glue, tacks and
Hey,
glue, it's
they
fine.
work.
And they were like, no. And then like I must have been like 9 or 8, and then like we moved out of the house to a different house when I was like 13, and for the next 5 years or whatever, two big strips where we had to peel like it off the ceiling because It was just like, oh, there's my evidence of my buffoonery right there. Yeah. They were not as jazzed as I was. I thought it was a brilliant solution, and they were like, why?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Any other things come to you guys about any other parts of the journey? Maybe like because sometimes there's like when the journey is over and you're like looking back and you're just kind of like, wow. Like again, like I was thinking about that end of that last season or that tournament season when I was like 13, and I remember going back to school for the next 8th grade year, and this was like 8th grade. I had known this group of 60 kids for 8 years, same group, and I remember they were even like, something is different about you. You seem slightly like changed. And I was like, what do you mean? And then I think it was just that had given me a level of like confidence. Like I walked in like being a little bit less shy to be myself and a little more outgoing. And I think that was like the typical like coming out of your shell, I guess is often the phrase. But there was definitely a moment of like, I do feel like I had a little bit of swagger. And I think that was like the success of that made me feel that. So like in that way, it was a good experience and not just like something I had to like recover from, but it was
Yeah.
like a tough experience. But it was like, yeah, it just gave me like a little boost, and I just always remember reflecting on like, I don't know exactly what was different, but I remember feeling different. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about the return part of it, like the road back, the resurrection, and the return with the elixir. To me, like that's the hard. I feel like that's the hardest part to notice, like in real time, like the tests and the ordeal. Like what you're trying to overcome and defeat and win, and the unknown for me is like, all right, like when did I feel like I was on the road back, like I had accomplished, and now I can move forward with what has happened. I feel like that isn't really like maybe I just don't personally give myself like credit enough, like thinking like I don't really, because I think some of the things that came to mind were like mistakes that I've made, like coming back from a mistake I've made or a choice that I made, or and it's more like how do I look at this without shame, like is an interesting thing, like I think that um, because I think that it's a very important part of the process. And I don't know that we allow ourselves to feel those things like as much as we know. Obviously, we feel the ordeals, you know?
Well, it's interesting because in the Parsifal version of the hero's journey, the really old story of it, there's actually this long period that he doesn't just sort of like slay the dragon and take the girl home. He
Yeah.
becomes like a wizened, grumpy, burnt out old knight.
Huh.
And he actually like he loses his taste for food, and he's just like nothing means anything to him. He becomes almost like, nihilistic or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then he becomes a hermit, and then he finally rediscovers the taste for life again through introspection and essentially like spirituality. And so it's kind of interesting because I think that part of the hero's journey is pretty apropos to a middle-aged dude's life. Is
Yeah.
like, it is easy to, whatever battles you fight, like you start learning how to avoid them better, and your life becomes, for lack of a better term, sort of stable that way. But there's a lot of maybe boredom and irritability that comes along with that. Like, so in a weird way, I think that a lot of us try to keep reinitiating the hero's journey so that we can feel that sense of struggle and accomplishment. I remember reading somewhere that I forget who it was, but it was some Silicon Valley weirdo multimillionaire billionaire dude, and what he said was that the reason that entrepreneurs become serial entrepreneurs is because they feel so lost when they sell their company. Like they get the money, they do the thing that they set out to do. They have more money than they could ever spend in one lifetime. Why do they keep doing it? It's because they miss the thrill of of the whole hero's journey thing, probably.
There we go.
What I was going to say is that's such a good point, because I think that sometimes I realize myself like making drama in my life, like things like creating something to overcome, like, and sometimes in relationship, I find myself like when you spend so much time with someone, sometimes I see myself like creating a fight, like where I notice like that I've just been with someone so long that like maybe there's like an inclination to like spice it up by like having something to overcome, you know, like, and so like there's this fight and then there's this reunion and like that, and I just see that sometimes in my relationships, and it's like, and it's so interesting to the way that you put it. It's like that is so true. That like there is sometimes when you get to like that plateau where it's like, okay, I made it through this. Like, and it's like, all right, well, now what do I do? You know, like now what's the interesting thing to overcome? You know, like, and that's like, I think that's where a little bit of fear comes from, where I'm like, oh shit, what's on the horizon? You know, like what tragedy is about to unfold that I need to not come up with myself, like, because I can come up with them all day, you know, like, but if just what do I have to live through that I don't get to choose, you know?
Right. That's so. I mean, that the Brian referencing that story is amazing, because like if we look at any, especially pop culture movie references, or to the hero's journey, it all ends after, like, right as the task is complete. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
rarely see the hero kind of sitting with the fact that they achieved what they wanted to or didn't, you know what I mean? And like, what are the repercussions of that? And just that those moments, like, because you have been in this ordeal, and then all of a sudden it like stops and ends, and you're kind of just left like, whoa, now
Which is
what?
one of the things I love about Dune, is because, like, if you go on to read the second book, the hero becomes Space Hitler. Seriously.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, he basically becomes like a bad emperor that has, like,
Wow.
and so it's really interesting because I think there's an element of that in all the hero's journeys myths, which is like, what if you become, well, isn't there a cliche where it's like, or no, it's not, it's from Batman. It was from a
Oh, I know what you're
Batman
saying.
movie.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, where
yeah.
it's like you either die young or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you either die the hero. Yeah, you either die
Yep.
the
Right.
hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And I think that is, man, that's something to avoid. You know, that's
Yeah.
something to avoid. And I think that it's so that is so interesting, because I feel like when I think of my biggest ordeal in my life that I could like really point to, that was like kind of, I felt like I was completely in it, like, and it was like a pivotal moment, was a horrible breakup. And it's like, and in that breakup, the way that it started was we were engaged and she ghosted me, like literally ghosted me, and we were
That
engaged. So
sucks.
we didn't break up or anything. So I was like in this like complete like blocked my phone number, like all these different things where, and that's hopefully you're watching, but it was
Yeah.
one of those things where it was like totally like, once I got through that ordeal, it felt like, oh my god, like there's nothing left, like I figured it out, like it's all good. And but it's so funny, there was a part of my healing where I lived in a tent like a hermit, like, and that was after I had gotten through it and felt better about it. It's like there was this period of introspection where I had to, without shame, try to think like, damn dude, I really messed that up. I didn't know I was so wrong about that. And it's like that was my like reward / road back, like kind of thing. And it's so funny how it applies to so many different parts of your life. I think it's
Mhm.
very interesting.
And I mean, as you're saying this, Josh, it's so funny how sometimes life gives you exactly what you need. And it's like, what does the hero need after completion of the task? Well, they don't need, they're like looking for the next task, the next ordeal, because they just need it. And it's like, what are you left with? And it's like, well, you're left with like the remnants, I guess, of the thing you just accomplished. So like,
Yeah,
that's like, that should be clue enough to be like, well, I don't have anything. Instead of looking outward to be like, where's the next thing? It's like, this is the time to go inward. And
yeah,
that's a part that is not, I mean, again, like the end of the first Star Wars, the original Star Wars trilogy, I want to know what happens to Luke right after an Endor. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Or it's like, what is, like, he did all, like, he did the things he wanted to do, and it's like, how much of the time is spent like, okay, now what? I mean, I guess you sort of probably had things you wanted to do, but still, I mean, there's that piece of you that is not empty, but like, maybe a little empty, because you're not focusing on the task you've already achieved. So it's like time to go inward. Yeah, very cool.
Well, and I think the journey also like allows you to know that like you're never going to be short on ordeals. Like that, it's like as long as you're breathing, there's another challenge to face. You know, like, and so I think of what you're talking about, Matt. That's so funny. I've thought of that many times when they're all celebrating at the end of the last one, when it's like they're like the music and everything like that, and it's like,
You got
and
some
thinking,
ghosts.
yeah, and you're thinking like, well, it can't like be done. You know, like there's still the Sith. You know, like there still are people out there, and that's why I liked when they did the next three, the most recent three. That it's like you do gotta get to see that after it ended, it didn't end. It actually still continued, and there's more to figure out and more to hold because you can't always hold power forever. And so it's just an interesting thing in our lives. Like you survive something, and you're like, oh, I got to figure it out. And it's like, no,
Well,
just
not
wait.
not for nothing that we're in this educational space now. And then I think there's also, if you look in the hero's journey, there's always the old teacher, right? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
the implication is that one of the best outcomes of being the hero is that then you become the teacher of the next hero, you know? And I kind of
Yeah.
love that idea that you actually like earn your battle scars and your chops, and then you're able to teach from a place of real experience, you know, where you've the Chinese call it eating bitter, but it's like you've actually like put in your time, you know.
Cool.
um
That's cool.
so that's a hopeful thing, is that, you know, we get
I
to be
like
good
that.
stewards of the next generation
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
I also like pay attention, enjoy, like, you accomplish the task and you're looking around like, oh crap, I did what I wanted to do. Enjoy, like you said, Josh. There's gonna be another ordeal. Enjoy the break. Enjoy the
Right.
time to self-reflect. Hold on
Yes.
to it and like use
Mm-hmm.
it because there will be something else.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Wow.
awesome.
I like
Well,
that.
thanks, guys. This was awesome. I'm so glad my wife had this brilliant idea because I wouldn't have come up with it.
I do
Um,
too. That's awesome.
but as
Me
soon it's one
too.
of those knew it was one of those cool topics that I was excited to talk about because as soon as she said it, I thought of like three or four different things immediately, and then I was like, I can't wait to hear what Brian has to say.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah,
I
it
We're gonna
love
was
say
you.
some
I
crazy
wanted to
shit.
hear what you had to say.
Awesome. All right, guys. For another Dudecast, I'm sure. Let's say it is August now. I'm already planning and I'll let you know about another Dudecast in September. This is going to be a monthly thing, so I'll make
I
sure
love it.
we are.
Awesome.
We'll be back in a few weeks. For the Wi-Fi Pod and the Hero's Journey, this is Matt.
This is
This is
Josh.
and this is Brian.
Here
Thanks,
we
guys.
go.